Did John Wayne sell America a myth? Or preserve the kind of battlefield memory Hollywood is now afraid to touch? Behind the flag-waving image are films about broken commands, doomed patrols, brutal island fighting, and soldiers asked to survive impossible orders. This list cuts through the legend to find the war movies every military history fan should judge for themselves. But one film near the top changes the whole Wayne argument. Number 15. Reunion in France, 1942. A Paris romance turns into a wartime trap, and suddenly John Wayne is not marching into battle. He is hiding inside occupied Europe. Reunion in France may not be Wayne's most famous war film, but it gives military history fans a valuable Hollywood snapshot of how early wartime cinema imagined resistance, collaboration, fear, and escape under Nazi occupation. The story follows a glamorous Frenchwoman, played by Joan Crawford, whose comfortable world collapses when the Germans take control of Paris. Wayne enters as an RAF pilot trying to avoid capture, turning the film from romantic melodrama into a tense survival story. Historically, the film is more studio drama than battlefield realism, but that is exactly why it matters. It shows how Hollywood, during the war itself, was shaping public emotions about occupied Europe. The danger is polished, the politics are simplified, but the fear underneath is real. For Wayne fans, this is a quieter war role, less iconic but surprisingly revealing. Number 14. Dark Command, 1940. Before the Civil War fully erupts, this film drags John Wayne into a borderland where politics, revenge, and violence are already poisoning the country. Dark Command is often remembered as a Western, but for military history fans, its value sits in the chaos before organized war begins. Set around the Kansas-Missouri tensions and loosely inspired by the violence connected to William Quantrill's Raiders, the film captures a world where militias, personal grudges, and political loyalty blur into something frighteningly unstable. Wayne plays the steady moral force opposite Walter Pidgeon's increasingly dangerous rebel leader, giving the story a classic good versus corruption structure. It is not a documentary-style Civil War film, but it helps frame a crucial historical truth. Wars do not begin only when armies line up. They begin when communities fracture, neighbors turn, and violence gains a flag. As Wayne war entries go, this one is unusual, but it belongs here because it shows conflict before it becomes official history. Number 13. The Wings of Eagles, 1957. This is not a war film about one battle. It is about the kind of man who helps build the future battlefield before the shooting starts. The Wings of Eagles reunites John Wayne with director John Ford for a biographical story inspired by Frank "Spig" Weed, a naval aviation pioneer whose life was shaped by ambition, injury, service, and sacrifice. Wayne plays Weed as a larger-than-life officer and writer, a man obsessed with proving that aircraft would become essential to modern naval power. For military history fans, that makes the film especially interesting. It is not about soldiers charging a hill. It is about doctrine, innovation, and the painful human cost behind military progress. The movie moves between aviation culture, family strain, physical setback, and patriotic duty, showing how military history is often built by people who never fit neatly into heroic posters. It is sentimental, very Fordian, and proudly old-fashioned, but beneath that sentiment is a serious tribute to naval aviation's rise. Number 12. The Horse Soldiers, 1959. A cavalry raid deep into enemy territory becomes a test of command, endurance, and whether military necessity can survive human conscience. The Horse Soldiers places John Wayne under John Ford's direction again, this time in a Civil War story inspired by Union cavalry operations behind Confederate lines. Wayne plays Colonel John Marlowe, a tough, mission-focused officer leading his men on a destructive raid meant to cripple enemy infrastructure. The film has the sweep of an adventure, but its most interesting tension comes from the clash between duty and morality. William Holden's surgeon character pushes against Wayne's harder military mindset, creating a conflict that military history fans will recognize immediately. The field commander wants results, the doctor sees the human cost. The film is not Ford's deepest meditation on war, but it carries a rugged sense of movement, exhaustion, and strategic pressure. Its strongest value is showing that war is not only won in famous battles. Sometimes it is decided by raids, railroads, and brutal logistics. Number 11. The Alamo, 1960. John Wayne did not just star in this one. He built it like a monument, and that is exactly why it still sparks debate. The Alamo is Wayne's grand historical epic about the 1836 siege, where a small group of Texian defenders made their stand against Mexican forces under General Santa Anna. Wayne plays Davy Crockett with a mix of frontier charm, patriot myth, and old Hollywood nobility, while the film itself leans heavily into sacrifice, liberty, and last-stand heroism. For military history fans, it is important not because it is perfectly balanced history, but because it shows how mid-century America turned the Alamo into a cinematic legend. The battle scenes are large, the speeches are bold, and the politics are shaped through Wayne's worldview. That makes it both compelling and controversial. Watch it as a war film, but also watch it as a cultural artifact. This is not just history on screen, it is John Wayne arguing with history. Number 10. The Green Berets, 1968. Few John Wayne films divide audiences faster, because this is not just a Vietnam War movie, it is a Hollywood argument wearing combat boots. The Green Berets arrived during one of the most politically charged periods in American history, presenting U.S. Special Forces as disciplined, courageous, and morally necessary in Vietnam. Wayne plays Colonel Mike Kirby, leading a story built around unconventional warfare, jungle operations, village defense, and the psychological tension of a war many Americans were questioning at home. As military history, the film is often debated for its viewpoint, simplifications, and patriotic framing. But that controversy is exactly why it belongs on this list. It reveals how Wayne wanted Vietnam understood, not as confusion, but as commitment. The action is direct, the message is clear, and the film refuses ambiguity even where history is full of it. Whether viewers admire it or challenge it, The Green Berets remains essential because it shows war cinema becoming part of the war debate itself. Number 9. The Fighting Seabees, 1944. Before the bullets came, the builders arrived. And that is what makes this John Wayne war film different. The Fighting Seabees turns one of the most overlooked parts of military history into a full-blooded wartime drama. The men who built the roads, airstrips, bases, docks, and defenses that made victory possible. Wayne plays Wedge Donovan, a hard-driving construction boss whose civilian workers are pushed into the brutal reality of combat in the Pacific. The film is heavily fictionalized, but its central idea is historically important. The Navy construction battalions, known as Seabees, became essential because modern war was not just fought with rifles and ships. It was fought with bulldozers, cranes, concrete, and speed. The movie captures that transformation with classic wartime urgency. At first, these men build under fire. Then they realize building is not enough if they cannot defend themselves. That shift gives the film its military history value. It is patriotic, muscular, and very much a product of wartime Hollywood, but beneath the dramatics is a sharp truth. Armies do not advance unless someone first creates the ground they stand on. Number 8. Operation Pacific, 1951. A submarine war is not loud heroism. It is steel walls, bad air, broken torpedoes, and men waiting in silence to see if the ocean becomes their grave. Operation Pacific places John Wayne inside one of the most tense branches of Pacific warfare, the U.S. Navy's submarine campaign against Japan. Wayne plays Commander Duke Gifford, a submarine officer facing not only enemy ships, but also technical failures, command pressure, and the emotional strain of repeated missions beneath the surface. What makes this film valuable for military history fans is its focus on operational problems. The Pacific Submarine War was not simply about brave crews firing perfect weapons. Early in the conflict, American submariners struggled with torpedo malfunctions and tactical uncertainty, and the film uses that frustration as real dramatic fuel. The romance subplot is pure Hollywood, but the submarine sequences carry weight because they show warfare as patience, calculation, and nerve. Wayne is not charging across beaches here. He is part of a hidden war where one wrong decision can destroy everyone. This is not his flashiest military role, but it is one of his most underrated. Number 7. Flying Leathernecks, 1951. The hardest battle in this film is not always against the enemy. It is between the commander who demands discipline and the pilots who still want to feel human. Flying Leathernecks gives John Wayne one of his strongest command roles, placing him inside Marine Corps aviation during the Pacific War. He plays Major Dan Kirby, a tough squadron leader whose harsh methods clash with the more compassionate Captain Carl Griffin, played by Robert Ryan. That conflict gives the movie its staying power. Military history fans will recognize the deeper question underneath the action. Does a commander protect morale by being loved, or protect lives by being feared? The film explores fighter-bomber operations, island warfare, air support, and the brutal pressure placed on pilots who had to fly repeated missions with no guarantee of return. It is not a perfect technical record, but it understands something important about command psychology. Wayne's character seems cold at first, yet the film slowly reveals the burden behind his severity. Flying Leathernecks works because it makes leadership feel lonely. In war, affection can comfort men, but discipline may be what gets them home. Number 6. Back to Bataan, 1945. This is John Wayne, in a war story where defeat does not end the fight. It only drives it underground. Back to Bataan takes viewers into one of the most emotionally charged chapters of the Pacific War, the Philippines campaign, the trauma after Bataan, and the resistance that continued behind Japanese lines. Wayne plays Colonel Joseph Madden, an American officer helping organize guerrilla fighters after the fall of the Philippines. The film combines combat, occupation, local resistance, and liberation themes into a story designed to honor both American and Filipino courage. For military history fans, its importance comes from the subject matter. Many war movies focus on major battles, but Back to Bataan deals with what happens after an army is pushed back and civilians are left under occupation. It gives attention to guerrilla warfare, intelligence, sabotage, morale, and the symbolic power of returning to lost ground. Yes, the film is shaped by wartime emotion and Hollywood simplicity, but its sense of anger and endurance is powerful. Wayne gives the story a firm, heroic center, yet the real strength is the idea that military resistance can survive even when official victory seems impossible. Number 5. Flying Tigers, 1942. Before America fully entered the war on screen, John Wayne was already flying into China with a cigarette, a grin, and a squadron full of danger. Flying Tigers is one of Wayne's key early wartime films, built around the American volunteer group that fought in China before the United States formally became a central combatant in World War II. Wayne plays Captain Jim Gordon, a tough pilot leading men against Japanese air power while dealing with rivalry, sacrifice, and the cost of reckless bravery. The film is not subtle, and it carries the urgent propaganda energy of its time, but that is part of its historical value. It shows how Hollywood helped shape the image of American airmen as bold defenders even before audiences fully understood the global scale of the conflict. For military history fans, the AVG angle gives the movie extra interest because the real Flying Tigers became legendary for their shark-nosed aircraft and high-risk missions. The film blends fact, myth, and morale-building drama, but Wayne's presence gives it a strong wartime pulse. It is not just an aviation movie, it is America's pre-war confidence turning into combat legend. Number 4. In Harm's Way, 1965. This is not the clean, heroic version of naval war. This is command under pressure, ambition under fire, and a Navy trying to recover from disaster. In Harm's Way gives John Wayne one of his most mature military roles as Captain Rockwell Torrey, a naval officer navigating the early chaos after Pearl Harbor. Directed by Otto Preminger, the film feels broader and darker than many earlier Wayne war pictures. It is not only about ships and battles, it is about leadership politics, damaged reputations, personal failure, and the brutal machinery of command. Wayne's Torrey is not a flawless monument. He is seasoned, wounded by experience, and forced to operate inside a system where decisions can cost thousands of lives. The film's ensemble cast adds weight, showing the Navy as an institution full of courage, ego, rivalry, and sacrifice. For military history fans, its value lies in strategy and atmosphere. The Pacific War as a vast chessboard where information is incomplete and every move carries consequences. In Harm's Way may be melodramatic, but it respects the complexity of command. Wayne does not simply play a hero here, he plays the burden of authority. Number 3. The Longest Day, 1962. John Wayne steps into D-Day, But this time, the invasion is too massive, too chaotic, and too historically loaded for even his legend to swallow the frame. The Longest Day remains one of Hollywood's grandest World War II reconstructions, tracking the Normandy landings through American, British, French, and German perspectives instead of pretending one hero won the beach alone. Wayne plays Lieutenant Colonel Benjamin Vandervoort, the real airborne commander whose injured ankle determination gives the American side a memorable human anchor. But the film's real power is scale. It understands D-Day as a machine of weather reports, delayed orders, parachute drops, naval fire, resistance signals, terrified soldiers, and commanders gambling with incomplete information. The black and white photography gives the film a stern documentary texture, while the huge international cast turns the invasion into a world event rather than a simple action spectacle. Wayne brings gravity, but he wisely becomes one piece of the wider operation. That is why military history fans keep returning to it. The film does not make Normandy look clean or easy. It shows victory as timing, luck, sacrifice, intelligence, courage, and confusion colliding before dawn. For anyone studying war cinema, The Longest Day is essential because it treats D-Day not as a patriotic slogan, but as the most dangerous logistical miracle of the war. That combination makes its final march feel earned, not merely staged for easy patriotic applause. Number 2. They Were Expendable, 1945. The title sounds cold because the mission was cold. Men were asked to fight, retreat, and disappear so a larger war effort could survive. They Were Expendable is one of John Wayne's most grounded war films because it refuses to turn early Pacific defeat into easy triumph. Directed by John Ford, the film follows PT boat crews in the Philippines during the desperate opening months of World War II, when American forces were outmatched, undersupplied, and forced to improvise against overwhelming Japanese pressure. Wayne plays Lieutenant Rusty Ryan beside Robert Montgomery's Lieutenant John Brickley, as small wooden torpedo boats try to prove their value in a collapsing campaign. The military history appeal is enormous because the film is not about dominance. It is about endurance under failure. Ford gives the story a mournful dignity, showing courage without pretending courage always wins the day. Wayne's performance is unusually restrained. He is tough, frustrated, proud, and wounded by the fact that brave men can still be ordered into hopeless situations. The film captures the painful arithmetic of war. Some units are sacrificed so others can regroup, escape, or fight later. That makes it more powerful than simple flag waving. They Were Expendable ranks near the top because it understands that military history is written not only by victories, but by doomed men who bought time. Its restraint makes the sacrifice feel painfully believable today. Number 1. Sands of Iwo Jima, 1949. If one John Wayne film forged his image as the face of hard battlefield discipline, Sands of Iwo Jima is the one that locked it into American memory. This is not Wayne as a charming cowboy in uniform. This is Wayne as Sergeant John Stryker, a harsh Marine whose men resent him because they do not yet understand what combat will demand from them. The film follows training, resentment, fear, island fighting, and the emotional transformation of young Marines being shaped for survival in the Pacific. Its military history value comes from the way it captures the Marine Corps mythos while World War II was still painfully close. The shadow of Mount Suribachi hangs over the entire film, and its connection to the Iwo Jima flag raising helped turn it into a cultural landmark. Wayne's Oscar-nominated performance works because Stryker is not built to be loved. He is severe, lonely, and emotionally armored, but every brutal lesson is meant to prepare men for a battlefield that will not forgive weakness. The film is patriotic, yes, but it is also filled with grief, exhaustion, and the cost of turning civilians into fighters. Sands of Iwo Jima belongs at number 1 because it did more than place John Wayne in a war story. It defined the war image that followed him for the rest of his career. That legacy still feels brutally alive today. And that is why John Wayne's war films still matter. Not because every moment is perfect history, but because each one captures how Hollywood shaped courage, sacrifice, command, and national memory. Some films inspire, some provoke, and some demand a second look. But if military history lives through stories, Wayne's battlefield legacy is impossible to ignore.